Most folks in Deadwater figured May Coulter was just another dried-up widow with tired eyes and too many rules. They saw the spectacles, the lace collar, the way she counted every coin like it might be her last, and they assumed she was harmless. But they never noticed how she always stood with her back to a wall, never questioned why she flinched when a man reached too fast, and they sure as hell didn't know what was buried beneath the floorboards of her shop. So, when the Dawson gang kicked open her door full of liquor and cruelty, they thought they were robbing a store. What they didn't know was they'd just stepped into a coffin. Before the smoke clears, you'll learn why they once called her Calico May, and why nobody ever lived to say it twice. Stick around for the full story, partner. And if this tale grips you like a trigger pull, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. There's more blood, grit, and redemption where this came from. The town of Deadwater didn't much care for change. The same creaky boardwalk, the same crooked church steeple, the same dust that rolled in from the hills every morning like it had business to settle, and every morning, right as the church bell tolled 6, May Coulter unlocked the front door of May's General Goods, swept the porch with methodical strokes, and turned the placard from closed to open. She didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't speak unless spoken to, but she always opened on time, and she never gave wrong change. Inside, her store smelled of lye soap, sun-dried beans, and the faint tang of gun oil, though no one ever questioned the last cent. Shelves were lined with what the town needed to survive: flour, rice, dried peaches, shotgun shells, sewing needles. Behind the counter sat an iron cash box, a stack of ledgers, and a bell that nobody dared ring twice. May Coulter was 53, or maybe 40. No one knew for sure. She wore her steel-gray hair tight in a bun, her shoulders square under a faded high-collared blouse. Her hands moved with the precision of someone used to cleaning weapons or stitching wounds, not folding gingham or weighing beans. The only man who ever tried to flirt with her left the store with a bruised ego and a pack of feminine tonic instead of the tobacco he'd asked for. And yet, folks liked her, respected her, or, more truthfully, feared her just a little, though they couldn't quite say why. Only the old-timers remembered the name Calico May. Only the truly wise suspected the revolver hidden beneath the counter wasn't for decoration, and none of them, not even the sheriff, had ever seen her fire it. But then again, she hadn't needed to. Not yet. The Dawson gang rolled into Deadwater just after noon on a Thursday in a cloud of red dust and horse sweat. There were 5 of them. 6, if you counted the boy with the crooked eye who always trailed behind, never saying much. They came in loud, shot up the water barrels outside the saloon, laughed like hyenas at their own cruelty. One of them rode, with a bleeding arm wrapped in dirty cloth. Another dragged a woman's scarf from his saddle horn. The sheriff, old Tom Greeley, took one look and stayed inside the jailhouse. He'd seen the Dawsons before, once during a failed pursuit out. Near Shale Ridge, he still limped from the bullet they'd left in his thigh. He knew better now. The rest of the town did what Western towns do. Doors shuttered, curtains drawn, people disappeared behind silence, all except for May Coulter. She stood at the counter with a pencil in one hand and a ledger in the other, her wire-rimmed spectacles perched low on her nose. The bell above the door jingled with a force that said trouble, and 5 filthy boots hit her floor. "Well, looky here," drawled the biggest of them, a slab-jawed man with a scar down one cheek. He picked up a jar of licorice sticks, popped one into his mouth without asking, and spat the end on her floor. "Ain't you a pretty little merchant?" May didn't answer, didn't flinch, just turned a page in her ledger and made a mark. The second man, thinner, younger, eyes full of malice, stepped up and slammed both hands on the counter. "Hey, we're talking to you." May finally looked up, her eyes behind the lenses. "We're unreadable." "You're robbing the store," she said, voice flat as dry earth. "Make it quick." That got a laugh. A full, rowdy chorus of it. One of them knocked over a barrel of flour. Another kicked open the trapdoor to the cellar and shouted down it like he expected ghosts. "You ain't even going to beg?" Scarface sneered. "No crying. No, please don't hurt me, mister." "No," she said. A palm came fast across her cheek, loud, sharp, disrespectful. May didn't move. She just blinked slowly, like she was calculating something private. Scarface laughed again. "You got stones, I'll give you that." The boy with the crooked eye lingered near the entrance, one boot still on the porch. He looked from May to his gang, then back again. And he frowned, just slightly, like a dog sensing a storm long. Before thunder, they emptied shelves, tossed sacks of oats, shattered a jar of peppermint sticks. One of them disappeared upstairs to the storeroom. Another found the trapdoor to the back closet and dragged out a woman hiding with her child, the Cooper widow who'd come in just for thread. "Please," the woman sobbed, clutching her daughter. "Don't hurt us." "Oh, don't worry," said the thin one. "We like to keep our hostages healthy." May didn't speak. She didn't move when they shoved the child, didn't move when they laughed, didn't move when Scarface set fire to the corner of a quilt on display. She just reached beneath the counter. Not fast, not panicked, measured, and what she pulled out wasn't the cash box. It was a revolver, black as judgment, long-barreled, with ivory grips carved in her own name. Scarface blinked. The others didn't even get that far. Later, folks would swear they heard no shots, just one long thunderclap. Others said they heard 5. Some said they heard May whisper something before she fired, but nobody agreed on what it was. All anyone knew for sure was that the smoke didn't lift for several minutes. That when it did, May stood alone. Her glasses were gone, her bun was loose, and her revolver had 7 fresh notches carved into the grip. She turned to the Cooper widow and her girl, nodded once and said, "Best get home now. Shop's closed." Then she walked to the door, flipped the sign back to closed, and locked it with the same click she'd used every evening since she first opened. The town of Deadwater didn't much care for change. The same creaky boardwalk, the same crooked church steeple, the same dust that rolled in from the hills every morning like it had business to settle, and every morning, right as the church bell tolled 6, May Coulter unlocked the front door of May's General Goods, swept the porch with methodical strokes, and turned the placard from closed to open. She didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't speak unless spoken to. But she always opened on time, and she never gave wrong change. Inside, her store smelled of lye soap, sun-dried beans, and the faint tang of gun oil, though no one ever questioned the last cent. Shelves were lined with what the town needed to survive: flour, rice, dried peaches, shotgun shells, sewing needles. Behind the counter sat an iron cash box, a stack of ledgers, and a bell that nobody dared ring twice. May Coulter was 53, or maybe 40. No one knew for sure. She wore her steel-gray hair tight in a bun, her shoulders square under a faded high-collared blouse. Her hands moved with the precision of someone used to cleaning weapons or stitching wounds, not folding gingham or weighing beans. The only man who ever tried to flirt with her left the store with a bruised ego and a pack of feminine tonic instead of the tobacco he'd asked for. And yet, folks liked her, respected her, or, more truthfully, feared her just a little, though they couldn't quite say why. Only the old-timers remembered the name Calico May. Only the truly wise suspected the revolver hidden beneath the counter wasn't for decoration, and none of them, not even the sheriff, had ever seen her fire it. But then again, she hadn't needed to. Not yet. The Dawson gang rolled into Deadwater just after noon on a Thursday in a cloud of red dust and horse sweat. There were 5 of them. 6, if you counted the boy with the crooked eye who always trailed behind, never saying much. They came in loud, shot up the water barrels outside the saloon, laughed like hyenas at their own cruelty. One of them rode, with a bleeding arm wrapped in dirty cloth. Another dragged a woman's scarf from his saddle horn. The sheriff, old Tom Greeley, took one look and stayed inside the jailhouse. He'd seen the Dawsons before, once during a failed pursuit out. Near Shale Ridge, he still limped from the bullet they'd left in his thigh. He knew better now. The rest of the town did what Western towns do. Doors shuttered, curtains drawn, people disappeared behind silence, all except for May Coulter. She stood at the counter with a pencil in one hand and a ledger in the other, her wire-rimmed spectacles perched low on her nose. The bell above the door jingled with a force that said trouble, and 5 filthy boots hit her floor. "Well, looky here," drawled the biggest of them, a slab-jawed man with a scar down one cheek. He picked up a jar of licorice sticks, popped one into his mouth without asking, and spat the end on her floor. "Ain't you a pretty little merchant?" May didn't answer, didn't flinch, just turned a page in her ledger and made a mark. The second man, thinner, younger, eyes full of malice, stepped up and slammed both hands on the counter. "Hey, we're talking to you." May finally looked up, her eyes behind the lenses. "We're unreadable." "You're robbing the store," she said, voice flat as dry earth. "Make it quick." That got a laugh. A full, rowdy chorus of it. One of them knocked over a barrel of flour. Another kicked open the trapdoor to the cellar and shouted down it like he expected ghosts. "You ain't even going to beg?" Scarface sneered. "No crying, no, please don't hurt me, mister." "No," she said. A palm came fast across her cheek, loud, sharp, disrespectful. May didn't move. She just blinked slowly, like she was calculating something private. Scarface laughed again. "You got stones, I'll give you that." The boy with the crooked eye lingered near the entrance, one boot still on the porch. He looked from May to his gang, then back again. And he frowned, just slightly, like a dog sensing a storm long. Before thunder, they emptied shelves, tossed sacks of oats, shattered a jar of peppermint sticks. One of them disappeared upstairs to the storeroom. Another found the trapdoor to the back closet and dragged out a woman hiding with her child, the Cooper widow who'd come in just for thread. "Please," the woman sobbed, clutching her daughter. "Don't hurt us." "Oh, don't worry," said the thin one. "We like to keep our hostages healthy." May didn't speak. She didn't move when they shoved the child, didn't move when they laughed, didn't move when Scarface set fire to the corner of a quilt on display. She just reached beneath the counter. Not fast, not panicked, measured, and what she pulled out wasn't the cash box. It was a revolver, black as judgment, long-barreled, with ivory grips carved in her own name. Scarface blinked. The others didn't even get that far. Later, folks would swear they heard no shots, just one long thunderclap. Others said they heard 5. Some said they heard May whisper something before she fired, but nobody agreed on what it was. All anyone knew for sure was that the smoke didn't lift for several minutes. That when it did, May stood alone. Her glasses were gone, her bun was loose, and her revolver had 7 fresh notches carved into the grip. She turned to the Cooper widow and her girl, nodded once, and said, "Best get home now. Shop's closed." Then she walked to the door, flipped the sign back to closed, and locked it with the same click she'd used every evening since she first opened. Deadwater hadn't seen this much talk in years. By noon the next day, the street outside May's General Goods was a parade of whispers and sidelong glances. Folks crossed the street instead of passing her store. Mothers pulled children close. When they saw her step out to dump the ash from her stove, a few men tipped their hats, but not out of kindness, out of the sort of fear that makes a man overcompensate with manners. May noticed. Of course she noticed. But she didn't flinch, didn't falter. She simply flipped her sign to open, stepped behind the counter, and set a tin of bullets beside the scale. Across the room, Cassie stood stiff as a new plank, clutching a broom like a musket. Her coat had been replaced with a calico work dress May found in a trunk upstairs. It hung a little loose in the shoulders, but Cassie didn't complain. She swept the same square of floor for the better part of an hour. May finally said, "You'll "We're a groove in that board." Cassie stopped. "Just don't know what else to do, ma'am." "You're not here to clean," May replied. "You're here to learn. That means we start with the rules." Cassie turned to face her, eyes wide. May spoke like a ledger entry. "Calm, exact. Rule 1. You only draw if you mean to shoot. Rule 2. You only shoot if you're willing to. Kill. Rule 3. Never count on a man's mercy. And Rule 4. You miss, you die." Cassie swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." May nodded once. "Then we'll start after lunch." They didn't train in town. That would have drawn eyes, and May had lived too long hiding in plain sight to tolerate spectacle. Instead, she led the swarm, girl out past the ridge that hugged the north side of Deadwater. Just beyond the edge of town, down a dry creek bed, was a wide patch of hardpan surrounded by scrub and stone, a place no one visited but birds and memory. Cassie trudged beside, her a little breathless, but trying not to show it. She carried a sack with dried biscuits and jerky. May carried the revolver. When they reached the clearing, May stopped beside a stump, handed over the gun, and stepped back 10 paces. "Shoot!" Cassie stared at the weapon. "Now?" May didn't answer. The girl fumbled with the grip, held it. Too high, squinted both eyes, and squeezed. The shot went wide, thudding into dirt. May didn't flinch. Again, Cassie adjusted. Fired. Another miss. By the 6th bullet, her arms were shaking. By the 12th, she was near tears. May walked over, took the revolver, and calmly reloaded it. "Don't cry. Don't apologize. Just breathe." Cassie nodded, lips tight. May crouched in front of her. "You want to learn this? It'll cost you. You'll get blisters, you'll get bruises, and every time you fail, I'll make you try again." "Why?" Cassie asked. May's voice softened. "Not much, but enough. Because if you ever pull that gun in real life, you'll have one chance. And I don't train girls to die slow." By evening, Cassie's hands were red and raw. Her ears rang from the echo of spent rounds. But by the final shot, she managed to hit the corner of a rusted tin can balanced on a stone. It wasn't clean. It wasn't fast, but it was hers. May didn't clap, didn't praise, just said, "Tomorrow we start on reloading." That night, word spread that the youngest Dawson boy had died from his wound. The town undertaker, Mr. Hatch, confirmed it with a grim shake of the head. "Bled out before morning," he muttered. "Didn't cry out once? Guess even outlaws can feel shame." May sat behind the counter, ledger open, unmoving. Cassie sat across from her, sipping a cup of tea. "They'll come, won't they?" she asked. May didn't look up. "Who?" "The rest of them. Dawson's kin, or friends, men who ride for blood." May's eyes flicked toward the trapdoor under the counter. They always do. The next day brought strangers. A man in a brown duster rode in before dawn and tied his horse outside the livery. He didn't visit the saloon, didn't ask for a room, just stood near the well, watching. By mid-morning, a second rider arrived. Mexican spurs, one eye cloudy with age, a scar down his neck like someone had tried to take his head off and missed. By nightfall, a third came. Tall, clean-shaven, with hands too smooth to be honest. None of them spoke, none of them smiled, and all of them watched the shop, May noticed. Of course she noticed. She locked the door early, closed the shutters, and began packing cartridges at the kitchen table like she was preparing for winter. Cassie said nothing until the third box was filled. "Are we leaving?" May paused. "Do you want to?" Cassie's jaw tightened. "I want to stay." May handed her a cloth and a pouch of powder. "Then load faster." At dawn they rode in, 6 of them this time, men not from the gang but of the same breed. Saddle-weary, sun-scarred, and blood-hungry, they didn't ask for whiskey. They didn't ask for supplies. They asked where the woman with the glasses was. No one answered, so they knocked on doors, threatened the preacher, and dragged the schoolmaster from his bed to make a point. May stepped onto her porch before they reached the store. No spectacles, no apron, just her boots, her long coat, and the revolver tucked into the holster at her hip like it had never left. "I'm right here," she said. The leader stepped forward, lean, pockmarked, with eyes like chipped flint. "You kill my cousin," he said. May shrugged. "Which one?" He blinked, then snarled. "You think this is funny?" "I think it's familiar." The man stepped closer. "You're gonna die for what you did." May's smile was thin and sharp. "Then you better start shooting." It wasn't a fair fight. It wasn't meant to be. May had planted glass shards in the barrels outside, laid wire across the porch steps, loaded every round with precision and poison. When the smoke cleared, 4 were down. 1 was crawling. 1 ran, but Cassie, from the rooftop, clipped his shoulder and sent him limping into the dust. May holstered her gun, blood on her cheek, her coat torn. Cassie climbed down, face pale but set. May nodded once. "You missed his heart." Cassie looked down. May added, "But you'll get it next time." By evening, the townsfolk returned to her porch. This time, not with whispers, but with baskets, bread, bandages, a jar of preserves. Even the preacher came, stammering thanks. May didn't weep, didn't soften. But when she turned to Cassie, there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Not warmth, not pride, but recognition, the look of a gunslinger who sees a shadow forming and realizes it's hers. 3 days after the second shootout, a rider came from the east, government-issue saddle, crisp blue shirt, dust on his badge. The kind of man who didn't smile and didn't need to. He wore a tin star pinned to his chest. U.S. Marshal. Name was Joseph Hale, and he had the calm of a man who'd buried more bodies than he'd counted. He dismounted slow, tied his horse in front of the sheriff's office, and walked straight into May's General Goods like he already knew the weight of every bullet fired there. May didn't stop stacking tins, didn't raise an eyebrow. Cassie stood behind the counter, both hands tucked beneath her apron, where the pistol rested just within reach. Marshal Hale swept his eyes across the shelves, took in the neat rows, the broom leaning by the stove, the new pane of glass someone had nailed where the Dawson gang had shot out the front window. His gaze settled on May. Calico May Coulter, she kept stacking. "Not a name I use anymore." "You used it for 16 years. I used to wear corsets too. People change." He pulled a folded piece of parchment from his pocket. "I got a wire from Kansas City. Said the Dawson gang rode into Deadwater, caused a mess. Said 6 of them didn't ride back out." May paused. "Then, I guess that part's accurate. You shot 'em all. They shot first, and the ones who came after?" May looked at him. No fear, no apology. They weren't visiting for church. Marshal. Hale didn't sit, didn't offer threats. He laid the paper on the counter. It wasn't a warrant. Not exactly. More like a record, a long one. Names, dates, towns. Every one of them linked to a bounty, everyone tied to a woman once called Calico May. "I knew you were still alive," Hale said. "Didn't figure you'd settle here. Thought you'd gone north, maybe Montana, someplace colder." May poured a cup of chicory and handed it to him. "Deadwater's cold enough. You got a permit for that revolver? I have a permit for breathing, too. Want to see that?" He didn't laugh, just sipped. Cassie watched the exchange like a coyote eyeing a trap. Her shoulders were stiff, but her eyes were lit, not with fear, but with something sharper. Loyalty. The sheriff arrived 10 minutes later. His hat was crooked and his mustache hadn't been combed, but he tried to carry himself like law still meant something. "Marshal Hale," he said. "Didn't expect to see a federal badge out here." Hale nodded. "Didn't expect to have 6 corpses and a gunslinger shopkeeper either." Greeley looked at May, then at the floor. "She did what needed doing. Those boys weren't here to trade." "No one's arguing that," Hale said. "But what happens next ain't up to you." Outside, the town was watching. People gathered, in small knots near the saloon and the livery, pretending to sweep stoops or carry water. The preacher stood by the church door, hands folded tight. Even the Cooper widow leaned from her porch rail, clutching her child close. Deadwater had seen plenty of violence in its time. Indian raids, drought riots, the war. But none of it had come from inside the store before. Marshal Hale stepped out, the cup still in his hand. "May Coulter," he said loud enough for the town to hear, "is not under arrest. She defended herself and her property. And for the time being, that's the end of it." The air seemed to suck itself still. Then, slowly, people went back inside. But not one soul stopped watching. Inside the shop, May leaned on the counter. Her hand trembled once, just once, then went still again. Cassie whispered, "He's going to come back, isn't he?" May didn't answer. She looked at the folded paper the marshal had left behind. Her record. Her past. Then she walked to the back room, opened a small cedar chest, and pulled out a canvas-wrapped bundle. Inside was a belt, gunmetal gray, twin holsters. She hadn't worn it in years. She cinched it tight around her hips. That night, Hale returned, not with chains, but with a letter. "Got a telegram from Washington," he said. "Says they've been tracking what's left of the Dawson outfit. Word is someone put a price on your head." "Let me guess," May replied. "A cousin with ambition." Hale didn't smile. "A man named Tomas Clay. Used to ride with the Dawsons, split off before they fell apart. Calls himself Judge Clay now. Runs a piece of territory south of Dodge. Real fond of law and order, long as he writes the laws and gives the orders." May's mouth was a thin line. "What's he want?" "You? Dead?" "Says you killed his blood. Put a $10,000 bounty on your scalp. Open contract. No limits." May nodded. "I've been wanted before." "This ain't like before?" Hale said. "This time they're coming in groups." For the next 3 days, the town held its breath. May trained Cassie every morning, taught her how to shoot, how to reload, how to move without making sound. They practiced blind draws, quick reloads, knife defense. Cassie learned fast, not perfect, but stubborn. She asked May one morning, "Why are you teaching me all this?" May didn't stop moving. "Because one day I won't be here, and you will." "But I'm just—" "No," May cut her off. "You're not just anything. You've got a spine like wire and a heart like flint. That's enough." The attack came at dawn on the 4th day, not 1 or 2, 9 men. They came on horseback, spread out like a net, rifles across their saddles, shotguns strapped to their backs. No shouting, no warning, just cold, coordinated movement. Men who'd done this before. May saw them first, from the upstairs window. She had 2 minutes, maybe less. She turned to Cassie. "You go out the back. Take the alley, cut behind the church, head for the hill. You see them follow. Don't stop running." "I'll hold the front." Cassie didn't move. "No." "Cassie." "No." May stared at her. Something flickered behind her eyes. Old grief, old fire, then she nodded once. "All right. You take left window. I'll take the door." They loaded weapons in silence, checked angles, measured distance. When the first shot rang out, May didn't. Flinch. She fired once, dropped a man from his horse. Cassie fired from the upstairs window, missed, then corrected. Her second shot dropped a rider cold. The fight lasted 6 minutes. 6 minutes of thunder and smoke and blood. When it ended, 4 men were dead, 3 wounded, 2 ran. And May? She leaned against the counter, shoulder bleeding, but smiling. Cassie rushed down the stairs. "You're hit," May waved. "Head it off." "Through and through." "Let me stitch it." "You can't stitch for hell." Cassie grinned through the tears. "I'll try." That night, the saloon held a vote. No official ballot. Just words, and when the dust settled, it was unanimous. May Coulter was now sheriff of Deadwater. Cassie pinned the tin star on her coat herself. Marshal Hale stayed 2 more days, then he left, without another word. But he left the telegram, and the badge, and the name of one man, Judge Tomas Clay. The morning sun burned gold across the rooftops of Deadwater, baking the scent of gunpowder into the boards of May's General Goods and painting long shadows down the church steeple. It was a quiet dawn, the kind that tricked the senses into thinking danger had passed. But May Coulter knew better. The kind of quiet that comes after a gunfight is like the stillness of a coiled rattler. It waits, watches, measures its next strike. May sat behind the counter, arm bandaged and stiff, the tin star glinting from her coat. She wasn't used to wearing law on her chest. It felt heavy. But it was a language the world respected, especially men like Judge Thomas Clay. The telegram still sat folded under the ledger. Bounty stands, will not rescind. Payment in gold for the woman who killed my kin. No name, no signature. Just a wax seal pressed in the corner. Scales balanced on a gallows. Cassie swept near the door, her movement slower than usual. She'd stayed up the night before, repacking cartridges and scrubbing blood from the floorboards with a bristle brush. She hadn't complained, but her hands were raw. May watched her for a moment, then finally spoke. "He's not done." Cassie didn't look up. "Who?" Clay. The girl's jaw tightened. "Let him come." May nodded once but said nothing, because she knew. He already had. They found the horse by the well. No rider, no note, just a bay mare with a U.S. brand and a saddle soaked in blood. It was Marshall Hale's horse. Cassie stumbled back when she saw the animal, her face going pale. May took one look, turned on her heel, and walked straight to the church. The Reverend was lighting candles. His hands trembled when she stepped into the nave. "What can I do for you, Sheriff?" "I need the bell tower." He blinked. "The bell tower? You have a view from up there no one else does." "I need it for watches." He hesitated. "It's sacred." May's voice was ice. "Ah, so's a man's life, and Clay just declared war." By noon, May had 2 deputies, Cassie, of course, and a wiry, tooth-scarred ex-rancher named John Merritt, who once fought in the Kansas-Missouri border wars. "Never quite found peace after. I don't sleep much anyway," he said with a shrug. "Might as well hold a rifle while I'm awake." They built barricades, reinforced shutters, turned the livery into a fallback point with sandbags and ammo crates. May passed out rifles to any man or woman willing to stand a post. Some hesitated. Most didn't, because everyone in Deadwater knew what was coming, and none of them wanted to see what Clay's justice looked like up close. At dusk, the rider arrived, not fast, not charging. He rode with the calm of a man who didn't expect resistance, or didn't fear it. He wore a black coat that hung past his knees and a white cravat that fluttered in the wind like a flag of arrogance. His face was lean and gray-bearded, and he carried no visible weapon. He stopped at the edge of town and waited. May met him alone, tin star on her chest, pistol on her hip. Cassie stood behind the storefront with a rifle aimed out the side slit, ready to kill. The man tipped his hat. "Sheriff Coulter," he said. May didn't blink. "Name and business." "My name is Darrow. I represent Judge Thomas Clay. I have a message." May tilted her head. He could have sent a letter. He prefers impact. Darrow reached into his coat slowly, not for a gun, but for a scroll tied with black ribbon. May didn't take it. "Read it," she said. Darrow untied. The ribbon unrolled the parchment and read, "To the woman styling herself sheriff, you took blood that was mine. The gallows were too generous for you once, and now you hide behind townsfolk and tin. I'll come myself. At sundown, 10 days hence. If the town delivers you to me, there'll be peace. If not, I'll salt the earth. I bring 30 men and a cannon. Decide wisely." "Judge Thomas Clay," Cassie cursed under her breath. "Cannon!" May's lips didn't move. Darrow smiled thinly. "We'll see you soon." He turned the horse, rode off at the same pace he came. May stood still until he was gone, then said, 10 days. Cassie stepped out. "We can run." "No." "Why not?" May turned to her. "Calm, but steel. Because if we run, he burns the town anyway. He'll say it was to prove a point." Cassie swallowed. "Then we stand? We build." For the next 10 days, Deadwater became something else. A fortress. Windows became rifle slits. Barns became bunkers. Children were taught to run, and not look back. The preacher handed out hymnals in one hand and Molotovs in the other. Even the blacksmith forged makeshift pikes from broken wagon wheels and fence posts. Cassie trained from dawn till dusk. Her hands bled, her arms bruised, but her aim grew true. May watched her and saw not a girl anymore, but a future, a shadow with her shape, her instincts, a legacy. On the morning of the 10th day, smoke appeared on the eastern horizon. Dust rose. Behind it like a funeral train, Cassie whispered. They're here. May holstered both pistols. I know. They came like a storm, rising out of the red horizon with sun at their backs and dust swallowing the road. 30 riders, strong, hard silhouettes against the blaze of dawn, and behind them, hauled on a wagon lashed with iron, rolled the cannon and a ugly black-bellied beast that looked like it had already buried half a town. From the bell tower of Deadwater's church, Cassie pressed a brass spyglass to her eye and called down to May, who stood in the street below, arms crossed, coat flapping. In the dry wind, 31 riders, not counting the driver. The cannon's real. May didn't nod, didn't flinch. They brought hell, Merritt muttered from the edge of the saloon's roof, and that looks like the damn devil driving it. Judge Thomas Clay dismounted in the center of the street. He was clean-shaven, his white gloves, unspotted, and he wore a long gray coat that fluttered like a judge's robe in the heat. He looked less like an outlaw than a man come to issue a ruling, and to see it carried out in fire and blood. May stepped forward alone, tin star on her chest, both pistols strapped to her hips, the silence of the town crowding behind her, like the held breath of a people who'd chosen to fight. Clay eyed her with disdain, like a cockroach on a courtroom floor. You could have spared them, he said. All you had to do was kneel. May's reply was flat. Not in this lifetime. Clay's smile didn't reach his eyes. Then I sentence you all. He turned to his men. Bring the cannon forward. The first shot cracked the earth open. It tore through the livery, obliterating the front wall and sending horses screaming into smoke. The blast echoed off the canyon walls, a thunder that scattered birds for miles. Clay's men whooped. One waved a red flag like it was sport. May gave no order. She didn't have to. Deadwater was ready. From the rooftops, rifles opened up, sharp, controlled fire. Cassie dropped one rider clean off his horse with a chest shot. Merritt picked off the flag waver with a bullet to the jaw. From the alley, near the blacksmiths, 2 farm boys with shotguns took out the cannon team's rear guard. Then the bell tower opened fire. Cassie, calm as a bank ledger, cracked off, shot after shot, reloading faster than most grown men. Clay's men rode hard, into the center of town, but the street was a trap. May had rigged the storefronts with glass, wire, and pitch. As the horses clattered past the bakery, flames shot high, turning their charge into chaos. 3 fell before they knew where the bullets came from. May dropped 2 more with her pistols, moving like a ghost from cover to cover, her braid whipping. Loose and her eyes narrowed to slits. Inside the general store, the Cooper widow manned the upstairs window, picking targets with a borrowed rifle, her jaw clenched and shoulders steady. They fought for 2 hours. It wasn't clean. It wasn't noble. It was desperation made deadly. Deadwater's people fought for every corner of wood, every inch of street. Children passed ammunition. Elders stood watch with knives in trembling hands. A preacher clubbed a man with the butt of a Bible before stealing his revolver and joining the fight. And in the heart of it all was May Coulter. Not hiding, not commanding from a distance, but standing, bleeding, killing. By midday, the cannon was smoking wreckage. Cassie had taken out the driver with a lucky shot through the eye. The gun team tried to reload, but Merritt lobbed a bottle of lamp oil and lit it with a match. The cannon exploded, taking 3 of Clay's men with it. May stood by the wreckage, gun smoke rising from her coat. She shouted one word, "Fall back," and the townsfolk obeyed. They'd done enough. Now Clay would have to bleed if he wanted to end it. By sundown, Deadwater was a battlefield. 17 of Clay's riders lay dead, another 8 wounded. Only 6 remained standing, and only 2 still. Had horses, but Judge Clay? He was untouched. He stepped over the dead like a man crossing puddles. He stood in the center of the ruined street, dust and blood on his boots, and screamed toward the shop. "Come out, Calico." Inside, May reloaded her pistols. Her hands were cut, her left shoulder raw from where shrapnel had grazed it. But her eyes were clear. Cassie touched her arm. "Don't. He's trying to pull you out." May looked at her, really looked, saw the dirt on her cheek, the bruises, the steadiness, and nodded. "Then we pull him in instead." May didn't walk through the front door. She slipped through the shadows, flanking left through the alley. Merritt went right. Cassie climbed to the roof, and when Clay took one more step forward, May shot him in the knee. He screamed and dropped, clawing at the air. But before he could fire, Cassie shot the gun from his hand. He looked up, face twisted with rage, as May stepped into the fading light. You think this makes you sheriff?" May's voice was a whisper of steel. "No, but it makes you finished." She raised the pistol. Clay spat. "Kill me, and another'll come." "I don't doubt it." She fired once. Clay slumped to the ground, dead before he hit it. The remaining men dropped their guns and rode off into the dusk. They didn't look back. That night, Deadwater gathered in the square. No one made speeches. No one sang hymns. They simply stood beside the bodies of the fallen, lit candles, and remembered. May didn't speak. She sat on the steps of her store, bandaged and silent, watching Cassie clean the rifle and check the sights. Merritt stood beside them, his hat in his hand, saying nothing. They didn't need words, because Deadwater had survived, and they all knew it wasn't just the star on her chest that saved them. It was the woman behind it. Aiktos. It took 3 days to bury the dead. 17 wooden crosses dotted the edge of town, each marked by a name, or, in some cases, just a set of initials scrawled in charcoal. They were outlaws, yes, men who'd come to kill, but May saw to it they were buried all the same, not because they deserved it, but because the living did. Deadwater was quiet again, but not the kind of quiet that brings peace. The blacksmith hammered slower. The preacher's sermons were short. No one rang the school bell, even though the children had returned to class. Something hollow lingered in the town's bones, a sense that justice had come too late, and survival had cost more than anyone wanted to admit. May sat outside her store, hat pulled low over her brow, one hand resting near the pistol on her lap. Her wound had crusted over, stitched tight with Cassie's nervous but careful fingers. The shoulder ached, but she didn't complain. Pain was just another language, and she'd become fluent in it. Cassie came out with 2 cups of coffee, handed one to May, and sat beside her on the steps. "They say you saved us," she murmured. May didn't look at her. "No, I just didn't run." "But that means something." May took a slow sip. "Means the fight's not over." Cassie frowned. "You think someone else will come?" May finally turned her head, eyes catching the sunlight like a shard of glass. "Someone always does." The town council met that night inside the saloon, the only building big enough to hold them all. Sheriff Greeley sat in the corner, still technically in office, though nobody called him sheriff anymore. The tin star now lived on May's chest, and even he didn't contest it. "We need supplies," said Mr. Hammond, the banker, smoothing his mustache. "Ammo, food, lumber to fix what's left." "And we need law," said the preacher. "Marshal Hale ain't coming back. We're alone." Heads turned to May. She stood at the back, arms folded. "You have law," she said quietly. "But what if the next one ain't Clay?" someone asked. "What if it's the army or the railroad?" May looked at the floorboards for a moment, then back at the room. "Then we make them know our name." The next morning, May wrote 3 letters, one to Marshal Hale, one to a woman. In Santa Fe, an old bounty partner turned station agent who owed her a favor and one to a publisher in Kansas City. Cassie watched her seal them. You think they'll answer? May shrugged. They'll read them. That's a start. She posted them herself at the telegraph office, then returned to the store and opened shop like any other day. Flour, salt, oats, shotgun shells. By noon, 4 townsfolk had stopped in, just to shake her hand. By sunset, 2 more had offered their help with repairs, and Cassie, she'd already built a training schedule for any woman in town who wanted to learn to shoot. Ladies' marksmanship every morning, she declared, pinning a sign on the church door, bring your own bullets or knitting needles. Either way, we aim to be dangerous. May didn't smile, but she didn't stop her either. That night she opened the trunk again, the one buried deep beneath the floorboards. Inside, beneath the badge and the bounty posters, was a smaller tin box, and inside that, a stack of letters, some old, some unopened, all of them in the same hand. Samuel Coulter, her husband, dead 15 years. He'd been a deputy marshal. Shot in the back by a smuggler while May hunted a bounty across the Arizona line. She'd found the man 3 days later and buried him in pieces, then rode west and never stopped. She hadn't opened Samuel's last letter. Couldn't. But tonight she did. May. If you're reading this, I guess I didn't make it back from Carson's Gulch. I knew it was a trap, but I couldn't not go. Not if it meant stopping what they were planning. You'd have gone too. That's why I loved you. I hope you hang up your guns after this. I hope you find a quiet place and open that shop you always talked about. Sell. Flour. Sell bullets. Just don't die for people who won't remember your name unless they need you. And if they do, then God help the bastards that cross you. Sammy sat with the letter in her lap for a long time. When she folded it, the dawn was near, and the tin star on her coat felt lighter. Word spread fast in the weeks that followed. The story of Deadwater reached Abilene, then Dodge, then all the way to Denver, about a shopkeeper who outdrew 30 men and buried a judge with her own hand, and they came, not outlaws, not soldiers, people, a woman with 3 sons fleeing a burned-out homestead, a school teacher who wanted to trade chalk for a rifle, an old writer with 1 eye and a letter of pardon in his pocket. They came to learn, to help, to live where someone like May Coulter wore the badge. Deadwater grew. So did the graveyard, but so did the hope. Cassie stood behind the counter one afternoon, hands on her hips, scanning the street through the open door. You think this lasts? She asked. May wiped the counter clean and glanced up. Nothing lasts. But maybe that's okay, she added. Cassie frowned. What do you mean? May leaned forward, voice low. I don't care if they remember my name. I just care that you remember what to do when they knock. Cassie grinned. Shoot first? May shook her head. Shoot last, but shoot right. That night another rider came, dusty, slow, coat flapping, rifle slung low. He dismounted, nodded, once to May on the porch, and handed her a sealed envelope. She opened it. Inside was a single line. You made the territory nervous. The price on your head just doubled. And beneath it, a second line, scrawled in a different hand. So did our respect. May folded it carefully, then looked up at the stars and smiled just once. The envelope arrived 2 weeks after the siege. No rider, no postmark, just a gray wax seal and a clean script that read, For May Coulter, by hand. Cassie found it on the porch stoop before sunrise, resting against the door like a threat. Too polite to knock, May turned it over once before opening it. Inside was parchment, smooth, official, and a single line of ink at the top. United States Department of Justice. Western Territories Office below that. You have been recommended for appointment as Federal Marshal, Territorial Jurisdiction. Please respond in person within 10 days. Dodge City Office. No signature, just a stamp, DOJ apt to W7. Cassie stared at it like it might bite. Is this real? May didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, she folded the letter. slid it into her coat, and stepped outside. The town was still asleep. A few horses whickered at the livery. The wind stirred dust across the churchyard. It was the kind of quiet she usually liked, but not today. By noon, the whole town knew. Mrs. Thistle whispered it to the dressmakers' guild. The Cooper widow repeated it at the dry well. Merritt sat stone-faced on the saloon porch, carving bullets and not saying a word. That night, the saloon held another council, only this time it wasn't about defense or food or repairs. It was about May. "You gonna leave?" Merritt asked, quiet. May leaned against the bar, her fingers wrapped around a chipped tin mug. "They didn't offer me a uniform. Just the badge, territorial authority." Cassie frowned. "What does that mean?" May looked up. Her voice was low. "It means I can hunt bounties again, with legal cover, anywhere from El Paso to Montana." Silence fell like a hammer. The preacher cleared his throat. "And what about us?" May looked at him, really looked. "I didn't ask for this." "No," the preacher said, voice even, "but you earned it." Outside, under the lantern light, May stood beside Cassie and Merritt. The badge from the envelope, sleek, silver, stamped with a fresh seal, gleamed in her palm. "I could walk away," May said. "Take Cassie, leave this place before the next fight rides in." "You could," Merritt said, "but you won't because—" Glanced over. "Why not?" "Because you're tired of running," he said. "And because now, for once, the fight found you worth keeping." Cassie shifted. "So, what now?" May didn't answer, but that night she sat up late, writing 2 letters, one to Dodge City, one to Hale. And in the morning she buried her husband's last letter under the tree behind the church. Not to forget it, but to honor it. 3 days later, May saddled her horse. She wore the silver badge inside her coat, next to her heart, and left the tin star of Deadwater on Cassie's chest. "I'm not gone for good," she said. Cassie's eyes were bright but steady. "I know. You're sheriff now." Cassie blinked. "Wait. What?" May swung into the saddle. "Town voted last night." "I didn't even run." May grinned. "Neither did I." Merritt stepped out from the store, rifle over his shoulder. "You sure about this?" he asked. May adjusted her coat. "No," and then she rode. It took 4 days to reach Dodge, 4 days of grit and thunderclouds, of narrow passes and old ghosts rising from the dirt. She passed burned wagons and fresh graves, saw the signs of raiders, and heard stories whispered in trail saloons about the woman who took down a judge. By the time she reached the city, people were already watching her. She didn't flinch. The marshal's office in Dodge was a gray stone building with bars on every window and a vault where the floor should have been. Man with a pinched face and a chest full of medals met her at the door. "You're late," he said. "I didn't say yes yet." He handed her a badge, a contract, and a file. Inside the file, 3 names, 3 faces, all connected, all from her. Cast, one was a rival bounty, one was a war deserter turned smuggler, and one was a name she hadn't heard in 20 years. Eliza Thorne. Cassie received her first telegram 2 days later from May Coulter to Sheriff Cassie Hart, Deadwater. Subject, update. Message, the badge fits. The hunt begins. Keep them sharp and keep your boots dry. May Coulter followed the trail north through wind-chiseled canyons and pine-choked hills, her coat stiff with dust and the new silver badge tucked out of sight. She rode with silence, the kind carved from old scars. She didn't chase bounties for glory anymore, didn't even do it for peace. She hunted because some things needed doing, and too many men had forgotten how. Her first stop was White Bluff, a mining town turned powder keg. The smell of dynamite hung in the air like perfume, and the saloon still had bloodstains on the floor from a knife fight the night before. She asked no questions, just slid the folded sketch from her pocket and showed it to the bartender. The man didn't speak. He just pointed toward the back, where a door hung crooked on its hinges. "May." Knocked once. The door creaked open to reveal a man with a scar that crossed both lips. His name was Silas Beckett, a gunrunner turned preacher, now peddling salvation for gold nuggets and forgetting who he used to be. He froze when he saw her. "May? You go by Reverend now?" she asked. He didn't answer. She stepped into the room, boots soft on the dusty plank floor. "You used to be faster than me." "I still am," he muttered, hand twitching near the drawer. May didn't flinch. "Then draw." Silas didn't. Instead, he slumped into the chair and exhaled like a man letting go of 10 years of bad decisions. "What's this about?" he asked. She dropped the file on his table. "You sold a crate of rifles to a man named Eliza Thorne. Ring any bells?" Silas went still. His face went slack. "She's alive?" "More than alive." "She's building something," Silas swallowed. "Then you're already too late." Meanwhile, back in Deadwater, Cassie Hart rode patrol with the tin star pinned tight to her vest. The townsfolk had taken to calling her sheriff, though she still flinched a little every time she heard it. But she stood straighter now, walked with purpose. And every morning she trained the new recruits behind the church. Some were kids, some were widows. A few were minors too old to swing a pick, but still sharp with a trigger. They weren't a militia, but they were hers. And when the telegram came from a neighboring town, "Stage robbed. 2 dead. Lone woman seen riding west. Wears a badge. Matches description of Sheriff Hart." Cassie stared at it for a long time. Then she saddled up. It took 2 days to catch up to the stagecoach wreck. Blood on the rocks. 1 guard gutted. 1 passenger missing. Cassie crouched by the wheel well and ran her fingers through the dirt. Boot prints. Small, worn soles. Not hers, but similar. She followed them west into the dry flats until she found a camp and a woman sitting by the fire. Her face almost identical to her own. Cassie raised her rifle. "Don't move." The woman didn't even flinch. "Took you long enough," she said. In White Bluff, Silas Beckett poured 2 glasses of rotgut and drank his before May even touched hers. "She's not just building an outfit," he said. "She's recruiting from what's left of the war." "Your war?" May frowned. "Mine?" "Veterans, gunslingers, disavowed scouts. Every bastard you and I tried to bury back in '69. She's gathering. Am like kindling." "Why?" Silas looked her dead in the eye. "To burn the territories clean." Cassie sat across from the woman. Same chin, same eyes, same birthmark on the left jawline. "Who are you?" she asked. The woman smirked. "The better version." Cassie's hand twitched near her holster. Not a good answer. The stranger shrugged. "Call me Clara. Folks in Wyoming called me Deputy. The Pinkertons called me Mistake." Cassie narrowed her eyes. "You killed 2 people on that stage." "No, I just took what was already mine. They tried to stop me." Cassie stood, hand on her Colt. "You're coming with me." Clara stood too. "No, but I'll ride with you. For a while." May left White Bluff before sunrise. Her next stop was Thorne's last known hideout, a canyon marked only by a burnt tree and the bones of 2 scouts who hadn't come back. She found the trail easily. Thorne wasn't hiding anymore. She was inviting. On the second night, May reached the camp. She didn't ride in loud. She walked. A circle of tents. A fire in the middle. And a woman in a black coat sitting on a crate, polishing a long rifle. Eliza Thorne looked up slowly. May. "Eliza." The fire crackled between them. "I figured we'd meet again," Thorne said. "I didn't." "You should have." May nodded. "I'm not here for vengeance," she said. Thorne raised an eyebrow. "What then?" May reached into her coat and tossed something at her feet. The badge. "Law." Thorne stared at it, then kicked it back toward her. "You think that'll save you?" May picked it up, brushed off the dust. "No. But it's what's between me and burying you." Thorne stood, her coat opening to reveal 2 pistols, pearl-handled and beautiful as sin. "Then you better hope it's bulletproof." Back in Deadwater, Cassie returned with Clara. The town didn't trust her, not yet, but Cassie vouched. "She's my blood," she said. "Maybe." That night, Clara helped mend fence posts behind the store. She whistled while she worked. Then looked at Cassie and said, "You ever wonder why your mama gave you away?" Cassie went still. "I don't." Clara just smiled. "No, but she did." May camped outside the canyon that night, her pistol on her lap and her eyes on the stars. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, only that Eliza Thorne was building something dangerous, and May Coulter had just walked into the fire again. But this time, she wasn't alone. By the time May Coulter returned to the mouth of Eliza Thorne's canyon, the wind had changed. Dust rolled in sheets across the red earth, masking the sun and muting the world. The canyon was quiet, too quiet, but it wasn't empty. She could feel it. Dozens of rifles lay behind those ridge lines. Horses hobbled behind stone, boots pressed into sand from sentries watching her every move. And standing atop a ridge like a flag planted in war-torn soil, Eliza Thorne waited. She looked like time had sharpened her instead of wearing her down. Her black coat hung like a curtain between death and judgment, 2 pistols on her hips, a rifle on her back, and a stare that hadn't softened in 20 years. "Come to try again, May?" Eliza called down. "Or are you just here to watch me finish what we started?" May didn't answer. Not yet. She stepped forward, slow but sure, her badge now pinned. On the outside of her coat, let them see it. Let them know the woman they were aiming at didn't hide behind steel. She wore it. "I didn't come to die here," May called back. Eliza smirked. "That makes one of us." 20 miles south, Cassie rode out alone. Clara had vanished in the night. No note, no tracks. Just gone. Merritt tried to stop her from following. "She's not your responsibility," he warned. Cassie shook her head. "She's more than that. I just don't know what yet." He handed her a pouch of cartridges. "Then ride fast. And don't forget who taught you to shoot." "I won't," she said. But the truth was, Cassie didn't know who she was chasing. A sister, a shadow, or the part of herself that always wondered where she came from, and why the blood in her veins always felt like it burned hotter than it should. At the edge of Thorne's Canyon, May and Eliza stared each other down. "I read your name on old wanted posters," Eliza said. "Used to think you were some myth. Then I watched you walk away from the hangman's noose in Amarillo, and I started to believe in monsters." "I read your file too," May said, voice flat. "You started with ideals, ended with graves." "I never ended anything," Eliza snapped. "They called me rebel, traitor, terrorist. But all I ever did was refuse the leash. You burned families, Eliza." "I burned flags." May's jaw tightened. "That's the difference between us." "No," Eliza said. "The difference is I never stopped. You traded your guns for ledger books. You tried peace. Look what it got you." May stepped closer. "It got me Deadwater. It got me Cassie." That name, Cassie, changed something in Eliza's face. A flicker there and gone. May caught it. "You know who she is." "I know what she could be," Eliza said, more careful now. "She's not yours. She's not yours either." Cassie found Clara near a half-burned ranch north of Drybone Ridge. She was building a fire, same as she had when they met. But this time, she wasn't alone. 3 men stood near her. One wore a Confederate belt buckle. One had fingers missing. The third was little more than a boy, not yet 19, with eyes that had already seen war. Cassie dismounted, hands open. "I came to talk," Clara smiled. "You came to listen." Cassie shook her head. "You don't want to fight me." "You're right," Clara said. "I want you to join me." The men looked uneasy. Clara raised a hand to settle them. "Don't you see, Cass? You were born for more than Deadwater. You were born from it." "What does that mean?" Clara's smile was too calm. "You ever wonder where your mother went? The real one? The one who gave you that fire in your spine?" Cassie stood still, rifle resting in the crook of her arm. "Start talking." Clara stepped forward. She rode with Thorne, and she died at May Coulter's hand. Back in the canyon, Eliza circled May slowly. "I never meant to raise armies," she said. "I meant to tear down walls, burn the men who built them." "You raised orphans," May said. "Turned them into killers." Some of them turned. Into sheriffs Eliza said, teeth flashing. Or didn't you tell Cassie the truth yet? May's face didn't move. Eliza stepped closer. You lied to her. You fed her clean stories about valor and justice. But you never told her who she was, who her mother was, what you did. May drew the pistol slow. Don't test me. Eliza didn't move. She just whispered, The girl deserves to know. Cassie stared at Clara, lips parting slightly. You're lying. No, Clara said. I'm telling you why you're angry all the time. Why you were fast with a gun the first time you held one. Why May never talks about the women she used to ride with. Clara reached into her coat, pulled out a photograph, faded, torn. 4 women, guns slung low, smiling like wolves. One of them was unmistakably May Coulter. Another was Cassie's mother. They called her Red Jane, Clara said. Sharpest shot in Eliza's whole camp. Your mother was a revolutionary, and May Coulter killed her. Cassie's hands trembled. Her voice dropped. Why? Clara leaned in. Because May was on the other side. May rode back to her camp just after nightfall. She sat by the fire, alone, cleaning her pistols with slow, exact strokes. She didn't believe in ghosts, but she felt one. Behind her now, her own, she whispered, She knows. Cassie rode hard through the night, toward the canyon, toward May, toward the truth. The canyon wind cut cold before dawn. May sat alone beside the coals of a dying fire, boots planted in ash, her revolver balanced across her knees. Her hat lay in the dirt beside her. Her coat was open. The silver badge at her chest caught the fading stars. She hadn't slept, not since Eliza Thorne said the name. Cassie. Not just a deputy, not just a girl she'd trained, but a daughter of the woman May had once killed, Red Jane. There weren't many women in Eliza's old outfit. Fewer still, who could shoot like thunder and vanish like smoke. But Jane had been one of them. Fast, cunning, with a laugh like rattling glass and blood in her teeth. And now her child bore a badge May had pinned herself. May hadn't wanted this, but the past didn't care what a person wanted. It only cared what they'd done. The hoofbeats came just before sunrise. May stood without drawing. She didn't need to, she already knew. Cassie reined in hard, dust rising like a curtain behind her. She didn't dismount, just sat there in the saddle, her jaw locked, eyes burning. May met her gaze, didn't blink. You found Clara? She said. Cassie nodded. She said you killed my mother. May didn't deny it. Cassie's voice cracked just once. Is it true? May took a long breath, then said, Yes. Silence. Cassie dismounted, walked forward like someone approaching a cliff. Why? May stared past her toward the canyon mouth, toward Eliza's army waiting just over the rise, because she gave me no choice. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Cassie stopped 3 paces away. Her hand hovered near her hip, not drawing, not threatening, just shaking. I looked up to you, she said. I trusted you. May's voice didn't waver. I never asked for that. She was my mother. She was a killer. So are you. May finally looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time in years, something flickered in her eyes that wasn't steel or resolve. It was regret. I didn't know she had a child, May said. Didn't know until years later. By then you were already in the orphanage, already carrying fire in your eyes, same as her. Cassie's lips parted. Her voice was barely a whisper. You knew. May nodded. I knew. And I still took you. In. Why? May's answer came quiet. Because I owed her something I could never repay. Cassie turned away, took 3 steps. Then stopped. She could have left. Could have drawn. Could have screamed. But instead, she asked the question she hadn't dared ask herself. Was she evil? May didn't answer right away. She believed in the wrong people. Trusted Eliza too long? When she tried to leave, it was too late. Cassie turned back, slowly. So you hunted her. I spared her the rope. The wind shifted. From the east came the sound of hooves. Not one horse, many. Cassie and May both turned. Riders. Dust clouds. The beginnings of Eliza Thorne's strike. They came with banners now. Red cloth tied to rifles, old war flags blackened by soot, 30, maybe more. Ragged, but trained. Cassie gritted her teeth. So this is it. May checked her pistol. This is it. I don't know if I trust you, Cassie said. May nodded. Then watch my back and decide after. They moved together, quiet, swift. Cassie climbed to the high ridge with a repeater rifle slung across her back. May went low, setting trip. Lines and positioning lanterns filled with black oil, the kind that turned fire into shrapnel. They had maybe an hour, maybe less. Eliza rode at the center of her force. Her coat snapped behind her like a whip. The men around her were hard-eyed and eager, the kind who had nothing to lose and no fear of consequence. They rode toward the canyon like it belonged to them. But May had chosen her ground well. The trap was lit when Eliza's lead scout triggered the wire. The blast rocked the canyon floor, lighting the sky with flame. Horses screamed, riders scattered. Cassie opened fire from above, dropping 2 men before they could regroup. May moved like lightning, never staying in one place long, her revolvers barking once, twice, never wasting a shot. The air filled with smoke and dust and shouting. Eliza didn't flinch. She drew both pistols and pressed forward. May and Eliza met in the middle of the chaos. Dust and fire danced between them. Gun smoke curled like ribbons. They didn't speak, didn't shout challenges. They just drew. May's shot grazed Eliza's side. Eliza's clipped May's thigh. They circled, moved closer, fired again. May dropped to one knee. Blood soaked her pant. Leg. Eliza stepped forward. Looks like you're slower than you used to be. May raised her pistol. Still fast enough. She fired. Eliza staggered. A clean hit to the stomach. She fell to one knee, but didn't go down. Cassie saw it from the ridge. Eliza aiming up at May with one shaking hand. And, without thinking, she fired. Her bullet hit Eliza's pistol square, knocking it from her grip. Eliza turned toward the ridge, eyes wide. Cassie stared back. The girl, the gun, and the truth between them. Eliza fell backward, not dead, but done. The fight drained from her face like blood from a wound. May limped forward and stood over her. Eliza coughed once. "She's your future, huh?" May said nothing. Eliza nodded. "Then maybe I was wrong." She closed her eyes and didn't speak again. By sunset, the canyon was quiet. Smoke drifted upward like the last breath of war. May sat with her back against a stone, thigh wrapped in torn cloth, revolvers empty. Cassie knelt beside her. "I still don't know if I forgive you," she said. May nodded. "That's your right, but I know who I am now." May looked up. "Who's that?" Cassie smiled. Tired, ragged, alive. Sheriff Cassie Hart, daughter of 2 gunwomen, and the last one standing. May chuckled softly. "Sounds about right?" The wind came soft after battle, the kind that sweeps dust from the dead and doesn't bother the living. Cassie stood on the ridge above the canyon, watching the last of Eliza Thorne's followers vanish into the horizon. Some fled on foot. Some led wounded horses. None looked back. They weren't prisoners. They weren't worth chasing. Cassie had learned that from May. Sometimes justice is letting a man live with what he ran from. May sat in the shade below, her thigh wrapped tight, hands busy reloading a pistol with slow, practiced fingers. Blood still stained her coat, but her breathing was steady. They hadn't spoken much since the shooting stopped. The silence between them wasn't cold. It was processing. Cassie climbed down from the ridge with dust on her boots and her badge catching what little light the dusk allowed. "You going to keep sitting there?" May looked up, lips twitching at the corner. "Can't ride till I patch this leg. Besides, I figured I'd give you a head start." Cassie arched a brow. "A head start?" May nodded. "You're sheriff, remember? Town's still yours." Cassie dropped beside her on the rock, letting her canteen fall between them. "You really think that's how it works? That you get to ride out into some quiet trail and fade?" May wiped sweat from her brow. "No. But I know there's a line. Between protector and legend, you cross it too long, and people stop seeing the person. Cassie looked down at the badge on her vest. Is that why you wore it on the inside? May didn't answer. She didn't need to. They buried Eliza Thorne. At the edge of the canyon, no prayers, no marker, just stone and silence. Cassie dug the grave herself, sweat dripping from her brow. May stood guard while Merritt, who had followed with supplies and clean water, covered the trail. When it was done, they burned what remained of the camp. Maps, letters, flags. The black banner of Eliza's rebellion turned to ash in the flames. May tossed her old badge into the fire, not the federal one, the original tin star she'd once pinned inside her coat. Cassie said nothing, just watched it curl and blacken. I thought you'd keep it, she said. May's eyes didn't. Leave the fire? Sometimes the past needs to know it's not welcome anymore. Back in Deadwater, the town had changed. Not drastically, not loudly, but subtly. The saloon was cleaner. The blacksmith had a new apprentice. The schoolhouse added a second bench. And the townsfolk no longer whispered when Cassie passed. They nodded. Not out of fear, out of recognition. She'd bled for them now, and they'd seen it. Merritt hung her photograph above the bar, a rough sketch, really, drawn by a passing rider. It showed her standing on the ridge, rifle in hand, coat flaring behind her like wings. Someone scrawled beneath it, in charcoal, "The girl who didn't flinch." Cassie rolled her eyes when she saw it. I flinched. Plenty. Merritt grinned. Doesn't matter. They believe it now. May stayed in Deadwater for a week, longer than she meant to. Her leg needed rest. Her horse needed shoeing. And though no one asked her to stay, no one asked her to leave either, she taught 3 young men how to reload faster, helped build new shelves in the store, shared coffee with the preacher who finally stopped flinching when she reached for her coat. Every night she sat on the front step of the general store. Cassie joined her most nights. Sometimes they talked. Most nights they didn't. One night, though, Cassie asked, "Do you think you'll ever stop fighting?" May stared at the horizon. When the world stops needing people who remember how. The federal badge lay wrapped in cloth in May's saddlebag. She hadn't decided what to do with it yet. Justice wasn't just a bullet. It was a burden. But she'd ride out soon. She could feel it in her bones, not because she didn't belong, but because someone else did now. On her final night, Cassie handed May a letter. "Marshall Hale sent a writer," she explained. "Said it's for you." May unfolded it slow, eyes scanning lines that bled with familiar weight. "Marshall Coulter, we've received reports of movement near the Wyoming border. Remnants of Thorne's network may be regrouping. If you're still willing to wear the star, we could use a steady hand. Up north, the job is yours." Signed, Emma Hale May read it twice, then passed it to Cassie. "What would you do?" Cassie didn't hesitate. "I'd go. But I'd leave a piece of myself here." May nodded, and that night she packed her bags. At dawn, she mounted. Her horse outside the general store. Cassie stood beside her, one hand on the saddle horn. "I still don't forgive you," she said. May met her eyes. "Good. But I understand." May reached into her coat and handed over a folded slip of leather. Inside was her first holster, worn, stitched, patched from a dozen battles. "Thought you might need it someday," May said. Cassie opened it. The initials inside were old J.C. Jane Coulter. Her mother's? She looked up, stunned. May just smiled. She wouldn't want you to shoot like her, but she'd be proud that you chose how. As May rode out, she didn't look back. She didn't need to, because for the first time, in a long time, she left a town standing and a girl stronger than the woman who raised her. Wyoming's winter came in like a drunk with a grudge, early, bitter, and mean. May Coulter had ridden hard through Cheyenne and up toward the Bighorn foothills, where Hale's riders said trouble had started. Townsfolk in the settlements whispered about bandits without flags and riders who didn't speak. A whole freight wagon had vanished without a single shot fired. A ranch house burned to the stone. May had seen the signs before. Disorganized, fast, and scared men didn't burn homes. Rebuilders did. Veterans with a new cause and old blood still in their boots. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like recruitment. She arrived in the town of Wren's Hollow just past sundown. It was smaller than Deadwater, with only one saloon, a half-built church, and a jail that doubled as a granary when the week came in. The sheriff met her at the gate, young, clean-shaven, and wide-eyed. "You're Marshal Coulter?" he asked. May tipped her hat. "For now." "They said you killed Eliza Thorne," May dismounted. "No, I buried her." The killing happened long before that. Meanwhile, back in Deadwater, Cassie Hart stood in front of the town's first council meeting held since the siege, a farmer. From the South Ridge Gate, a man named Rafe Gorman had stepped forward with a new concern. "They're setting fires out past the river trail," he said. "First we thought it was kids. Then we found one of our hounds skinned and nailed. To a fence post." Cassie folded her arms. "Message? Looks like it." "From who?" Gorman hesitated. "Said they're the true sons, that we've got a sheriff who doesn't belong. Said you're—" "Wearing the wrong blood," Cassie finished. The room went quiet. Merritt shifted beside her, hand brushing the rifle on his hip. "You want 'em found?" Cassie nodded once. "No, I want 'em seen. We let 'em keep hiding. They think they own the shadows." In Wren's Hollow, May paced. The perimeter of a burned cabin with 2 ranch hands and the sheriff trailing behind her. "Anything missing?" she asked. The younger man nodded. "Tools, saddles, some kerosene." May crouched by the hearth. The fire had been clean, professional, controlled, no wild looting, just purpose. She looked to the northeast, toward the jagged hills. "They're moving in packs," she said. "Military discipline. They're not hiding. They're training." The sheriff rubbed the back of his neck. But for what? May stared into the woods. For the next Thorne. Cassie posted riders on all roads into Deadwater and put Merritt in charge of nightly watches. She took her coffee black now and carried her pistol visible. The tin star on her chest wasn't just decoration. It was bait. She wanted whoever wrote that threat to try her. But the first blood didn't come from her. It came from a butcher named Ellis, found hung by his ankles in his smokehouse, his tongue nailed to the wall with a note scrawled in blood, "Sheriffs die slow." May received a telegram the next morning. From Sheriff Cassie Hart to Marshal May Coulter, subject problem. Message Deadwater's stirring again. "True sons. Ellis is dead. I'm staying put. I'm not you, but I'm enough." C. May read it twice, then saddled her horse and headed north. She rode into a trap 2 days later. 10 riders in Union blue, but no insignias. Not bandits. Soldiers, without a flag. Mercenaries who fought like they'd read her file. May took 2 down before her horse collapsed under her. She rolled clear, dragged herself behind a rock, and counted her shots. 5 left. Then she heard the voice. "May Coulter," it said, "always where the fire's hottest." A woman stepped into view, lean dark hair tied tight, an iron badge on her chest that read, "Deputy Commander." May squinted. "You served with Thorne." The woman nodded. She wanted chaos. "I want territory. You can call me Reeve." "New? Queen of the Ashes?" "Not yet," Reeve smiled. "But soon." May aimed her pistol. Reeve didn't blink. "You can shoot me, or you can hear the offer." May didn't lower the gun. "I'm not interested." "You should be, because the next town isn't yours, and the next girl who dies might be." May fired, missed. Reeve didn't. Cassie stared at the new map of town, new markers, new routes, and a growing list of names she couldn't protect. Fast enough. She'd once asked May if the fight ever stopped. She knew the answer now. No, the fight just changed uniforms, and sometimes it came wearing your mother's face. The snow fell quiet and cruel in the highlands. It settled over May Coulter's coat, stinging where it met blood. She lay half-hidden beneath a ridge of broken stone, one leg twisted wrong, her pistol jammed with frost. The last of Reeve's soldiers had circled hours ago, their campfire light still flickering somewhere east. They thought she was dead, And maybe she was, at least the part of her that once rode for justice. She blinked slow, lips cracked and blue, whispering to herself to stay conscious. One word repeated, Cassie. 300 miles south, Deadwater burned at the edges, not flames. Not yet, but intent. The true sons had crept in like rot, quiet, patient, men in the saloon whispering louder each night, boys throwing rocks at Cassie's window, a preacher's wife found with her hand broken and a note pinned to her coat. Sheriff's town? Then bleed for her. Cassie didn't call a meeting. She rode to the gallows square at dawn, fired a single shot into the air, and pinned a fresh poster to the old scaffold, Deadwater is not yours to take. If you come for me, bring a coffin. Sheriff Cassandra Hart Merritt watched from the livery porch. He said nothing, but the rifle in his hands was loaded. May dragged herself to shelter by sheer will, an old trapper's hut, barely more than 4 walls and a roof stitched from canvas and rot. She collapsed inside. Was there, delirious with pain and smoke, that the ghosts came, not in dreams, not in hallucination, in memory, her husband, Samuel, sitting beside a campfire, smiling beneath the weight of his final ride. Eliza Thorne, younger, freer, before the blood, and Jane, Cassie's mother. Jane's voice was the clearest. Shukumori, think you raised her to be like you? The voice whispered. You raised her to be better, stronger, so let her finish what you started. May gritted her teeth and pulled the badge from her coat. It gleamed faint in the darkness, and she decided she would not die here. Cassie rode alone to Brim Hollow, 2 towns east, where Reeves' message had been carved into the church door. Thorne may be gone, but her heirs remain. Inside the chapel she found 2 dead and 1 wounded boy, no more than 14, clutching a rifle, like a prayer. "What's your name?" she asked. "Eli." Who did this? Didn't see their faces. They were black. Cassie gave him her canteen, then stood and walked out into the street. A crowd had gathered, some waiting for her to act, some waiting for her to fail. Cassie looked them all in the eye. "You don't get to wait any more," she said. "Choose." May lit a fire in the trapper's hut with torn bandages and broken dreams. She cauterized her leg with a heated blade, bit through her glove to keep from screaming. Then she reloaded the 1 pistol that still worked and carved a line in the cabin door. Here. It wasn't a message to enemies, it was a promise to herself. If she died here, it wouldn't be crawling, it would be standing. That night in Deadwater, 3 men tried to storm the general store. Cassie met them on the porch. She didn't shout, didn't warn. She drew and dropped all 3 before they hit the step. One lived long enough to spit her name like a curse. "You're her," Cassie. Leaned down. "No. I'm me." Merritt buried the bodies at dawn. Cassie sat on the chapel steps, blood on her hands, her face unreadable. "I thought I'd feel more when it happened," she said. Merritt didn't reply. She looked up. "I don't even know if I'm doing this right," he shrugged. "Doing it means you're already ahead of most." A rider came into town at dusk. No horse, no coat, just snow in his beard and urgency in his steps. He handed Cassie a folded cloth. Inside, a silver badge scorched black at the edges. Beneath it, a note in May's handwriting. "Reeve is alive, north of the hollow. I'm wounded. Come or don't. But if you come, bring fire." Cassie read it once, then stood. "Merritt," she said. "Saddle 2 horses." He blinked. "You riding for her?" Cassie nodded. "No one buries her but me." Cassie Hart rode north into the teeth of winter. The wind howled like it had a grudge. Snow blew sideways across the trail, and the mountains rose ahead like the backs of sleeping giants. Beside her, Merritt rode silent, his rifle slung low, his face set like stone. They didn't talk much. There wasn't time. There wasn't air to waste. The message May had sent was barely more than a whisper, a name, a wound, a warning, Reeve, and 2 words Cassie couldn't forget. Bring fire. May Coulter didn't move for 2 days. She rationed water. bit through. Fever dreams. Repack the wound on her thigh using torn canvas and grit. She counted each cartridge like a prayer and saved her last 2 matches for the fire. The badge hung on the wall beside her, blackened at the edge but still whole. She didn't expect rescue. She expected them. On the 3rd night, they came. Reeves. Soldiers, 9 in all, faces wrapped in cloth, boots muffled, rifles drawn. They circled the cabin like wolves. One tossed a torch. Another kicked in the door. May had already moved to the rafters. She dropped 2 before they cleared the threshold. The 3rd caught her in the ribs with a wild shot, spun her hard. She fell through the loft and hit the floor with a grunt, but didn't let go of her pistol. "Hold!" someone shouted outside, a voice she knew. Reeve. Cassie reached the canyon mouth just after dusk. Smoke curled against the snow. The cabin in the distance burned low, not a blaze, but a beacon. Cassie dismounted while Merritt took high ground. She moved through the trees with the speed of someone who knew this would be the last time. Inside her coat, 2 pistols. Inside her pack, a tin flask filled with kerosene, 5 fuses, and a promise. She didn't come for survival. She came to end it. May coughed blood and pressed her back to the cabin wall. Her hands shook. Her breathing rattled, but she held the gun. Steady as Reeves stepped through the smoke. "Still alive," Reeves said. "You're stubborn." "You're late," May rasped. "I came for the badge. You can have it." May tossed it to the floor. Reeves stepped over it. "I don't want your past. I want your legacy." May grinned, bloody and defiant. "Too late. I already gave it away." The first explosion came from the tree line. Merritt lit 2 fuses and hurled them with precise force. One hit a supply crate. The second took a horse, mid-scream. Men shouted. Horses bucked. Cassie charged from the smoke like a myth, coat flapping, pistols drawn, eyes hard and sure. She dropped 1 man at full gallop, shot a second before she hit the porch, then kicked the cabin door in. May looked up, say he, pale, wounded, but alive. "Took you long enough," she wheezed. Cassie knelt, arm around her. "You said bring fire." "I meant dynamite. Next time, be specific." Outside, Reeve barked orders. 5 men flanked the cabin. One set fire to the woodpile. Another lit a fuse of his own, but Merritt's bullet took him down before it sparked. Cassie peeked through the shutters. 6 left. May coughed. "Give me a gun." "You're shot. I've been shot before." Cassie handed her a Colt. "Then we end this." They didn't wait. Cassie kicked the back door open while May covered the front. Together, they split the assault. Forcing the flanks into confusion, Merritt took one from above. Cassie moved like wind, May like a storm. Reeve realized too late. He wasn't fighting one lawman. He was fighting 2 legends, one made, one becoming. When it was over, the snow was black with blood. Reeve crawled from the tree line, face cut, 1 leg ruined. Cassie stood over her, breath ragged, gun lowered. "You could have built something." "Real," she said. Reeve spat. "You think this town, this badge break will save you?" "No," Cassie said, then nodded at May. She already did. She raised her pistol, but May's voice cut through. "No." Cassie looked back, May's eyes. "We're clear. Cold. She doesn't deserve a bullet. Let the North bury her." Cassie hesitated, then holstered her gun. They burned the cabin that night, not out of rage, but ritual. May leaned on Cassie's shoulder as they watched it fall. "You okay?" Cassie asked. May winced. "I've had worse." They stood there until dawn, 2 women aflame, and the last page of one war turning into the first line of something else. Dead water woke to quiet, not silence. That was never the case here. Chickens scratched in the dust. A hammer rang out from the smithy. A wind curled between the buildings, lifting old wanted posters and shaking window panes loose from their latches. But beneath it all there was a stillness that hadn't existed before. A stillness earned. 2 riders came down the ridge just after dawn. One was broad-shouldered, older, with a limp in her left leg and a scar under her chin. The other rode tall in the saddle, coat flapping like a flag. Tin star catching the morning. Sun. Cassie Hart. May Coulter. Deadwater stopped, not in fear, but in recognition. Merritt met them at the livery, his face breaking into the smallest of smiles. "You both look terrible," he said. Cassie swung down, bones sore and fingers still bandaged. "We're alive." May stayed in the saddle a second longer, gazing at the town. The porch she once sat on, the store window she used to wash down each morning with water and vinegar. "I half expected it to be gone," she said. "It tried," Merritt replied, "but it remembered you." The saloon doors creaked open as they passed. The preacher tipped his hat. The schoolteacher clapped once, then caught herself and went quiet. Even the children knew something had returned, something fierce and final. They didn't say hero. They didn't say sheriff. They said home. May sat on the porch of the general store that afternoon, her legs stretched out, coffee in hand, revolver unbuckled at her side. Cassie stood at the edge of Main Street watching two young deputies run. Drills near the well. One was 13. The other barely old enough to reach the trigger, but they shot straight. "Think they'll be ready?" Merritt asked. Cassie didn't blink. "They have to be," he nodded. "And you?" She turned to him. "I'm not May." "No," Merritt said. "You're not." Then, after a beat, "You're louder." May laughed when she heard that, coughed after. But she laughed. Later that night, she and Cassie shared a bottle of rye by the stove. Outside, the town settled into its bones. "You still think about riding on?" Cassie asked. May shook her head. "No, I've ridden enough. Time for someone else to wear the trail thin." Cassie tilted her cup toward her. "You ever think that maybe we were never the bad ones?" May smiled. "Tired, proud, older than the canyon wind, I think we were. Just the ones left standing." In the days that followed, the town changed again. Subtle things. The gallows were taken down. The jail got new bars. The chapel got a second bell. And Cassie's star, once scuffed and scratched, got polished every Friday morning by a boy who said he wanted to be just like her. She told him, "No, you don't." But she still taught him to shoot. On the final night of winter, May stood in the doorway of the general store. Cassie joined her, arms crossed. "You think we're done?" May watched the stars. "No. But I think we've earned a chapter where no one dies for a while." Cassie nodded. "Can I ask you something?" May looked over. Cassie's voice dropped. "Do you regret it? Any of it?" May thought for a long time, then said, "No, because it brought me here, to this place, to this fight, to you." Cassie's throat tightened. She looked away, then said, "You're not going to be around forever." May smiled. "No one worth their bullets is." The next morning, May was gone. No note, no sign. Just the badge she once wore. The silver one, burned on the edge, left hanging from the nail beside the ledger. Cassie found it just after opening. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She picked it up, held it once, then placed it in a wooden box behind the counter marked History. And she stepped into the street as the sheriff of Deadwater, with wind at her back and justice in her hands.